The ache was a familiar tenant in Alara's chest, a resident of 4 years, 3 months, and 12 days. It had its own rhythms, its own schedule. It was a dull throb when Lena laughed at something Alara said, a sharp, twisting pang when Lena mentioned Liam, and a hollow, cavernous emptiness when she watched them leave a room together, hand in hand. Tonight, the ache was a suffocating pressure, constricting her lungs as she sat on Lena's plush cream sofa, nursing a cup of tea she did not want. "I just don't get it," Lena said, her voice a fragile thread of frustration. She was pacing the length of her living room, a storm contained within the elegant lines of her body. "He says he loves me, but he doesn't see me. It's like I'm talking to a beautifully decorated wall." The words hit it, and they just fall. Alara took a slow, careful sip of the tea. It scalded her tongue, a physical distraction from the emotional searing. This was her role. She was the supportive friend, the safe harbor, the keeper of secrets and frustrations that were not her own, but felt heavier than any burden she personally carried. She was the ghost at the feast of Lena and Liam's relationship, silently observing, offering advice that felt like swallowing shards of glass. "What happened this time?" Alara asked, her voice steady, a practiced calm she had perfected over countless nights, just like this one. Lena stopped pacing and sank onto the rug at Alara's feet, leaning her head back against Alara's knees. The casual, trusting contact sent a jolt, a forbidden spark, up Alara's spine. She fought the instinct to flinch away, and also the more dangerous instinct to thread her fingers through Lena's soft, honey-blonde hair. "The same thing that always happens," Lena murmured, her eyes closing. "I try to talk to him. I mean, really talk. About the future, about what we want, about this feeling I have that we're just performing roles. The happy couple." He just smiled, kissed my forehead, and said I was overthinking things again. He told me to relax. Relax. As if our entire connection is just a switch I can turn off. Alara's heart twisted into a painful knot. "I see you," she wanted to scream. "I see every flicker of doubt in your eyes, every forced smile, every time you bite your lip to keep from saying what you really feel. I see all of it. I see you." Instead, she said, "He doesn't like feeling challenged." It was a neutral, observational truth. "No," Lena breathed out, a sigh that sounded like defeat. "He likes things easy, comfortable. And I'm not easy." "Not anymore," she shifted, turning to look up at Alara, her blue eyes wide and clouded with a confusion that mirrored Alara's own secret agony. "Is it too much to ask for? To want someone who wants to know the messy parts? Not just the version I put on for his parents?" "No," Alara thought. "It's the only thing worth asking for." But a sudden, torrential downpour began outside, lashing against the large apartment windows with a violence that startled them both. A moment later, the lights flickered twice and died, plunging the room into a disorienting darkness, broken only by the faint glow of the city through the rain-streaked glass. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," Lena groaned. Before Alara could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from her building's management. "Urgent. Major pipe burst on floors 5 to 8. Water and power shut off for emergency repairs. Estimated 48 to 72 hours. Alara lived on the 7th floor. A cold dread, entirely separate from the ache of her heart, washed over her. She was, quite literally, stranded. "What is it?" Lena asked, sensing the shift in her silence. Alara read the text aloud, her voice sounding small in the sudden, vast darkness. She felt a wave of panic. She had no family in the city. Her other friends lived in tiny studios with no room to spare. The thought of a sterile, impersonal hotel room made her feel even more isolated. "Well, that's settled then," Lena said, her voice suddenly firm, practical. The crisis seemed to have shaken her from her own melancholy. "You're staying here." "Lena, I can't." You have Liam." "Liam is not here," Lena said, a sharp edge to her tone. "And frankly, even if he were, my best friend being temporarily homeless trumps his need for an easy evening. You're not sleeping in a hotel. End of discussion. You can crash here until they fix your place." Relief was so potent it almost made Alara dizzy. but it was immediately followed by a wave of pure, unadulterated terror. Staying here. In Lena's space. In this intimate, charged atmosphere. It was both a dream and a nightmare. Okay, Alara whispered. Thank you. Lena found a couple of candles in a drawer, her movements sure and familiar in the dark. Soon, a soft, flickering glow filled the space, casting dancing shadows on the walls. It made the room feel smaller, more intimate. More dangerous. Right, Lena said, turning to face her, the candlelight making the gold flecks in her blue eyes glitter. The sofa is comfortable, but it's not great for multiple nights. And my spare room is filled with boxes of my old college stuff I keep meaning to sort, she paused, chewing on her lower lip. Alara's heart began to beat a frantic, uneven rhythm against her ribs. She knew what was coming. She could see the thought forming behind Lena's eyes. Please don't say it. Please just point me to the sofa. Lena's gaze was direct, unwavering, and held a strange sort of vulnerability. You can sleep in my bed. The world tilted on its axis. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. An invitation that hung in the air between them, thick and heavy with unspoken things. For a moment, Alara couldn't breathe. The ache in her chest flared, white-hot, but this time it was laced with a terrifying, exhilarating hope. Sleeping in Lena's bed. The place she shared with Liam. The place that was the epicenter of Alara's secret, 4-year-long heartbreak. I don't want to intrude, Alara managed, her voice a strangled whisper. It was the weakest protest she had ever uttered. Alara, Lena said, her voice softening, losing its practical edge and becoming something else entirely, something tender. It's the biggest, most comfortable surface in the apartment. We've had sleepovers since we were 15. It's not weird. Don't you be weird about it. The irony was a bitter pill. Not weird. Alara's entire existence around Lena felt weird, a carefully constructed performance of platonic affection stretched taut over a chasm of unspoken love. But she was trapped. Trapped by the burst pipe, by the late hour, by Lena's insistent kindness, and most of all, by her own traitorous heart that screamed yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Okay, she said, the word barely audible. Okay. An hour later, Alara was lying stiffly on the left side of Lena's king-sized bed, wearing a borrowed t-shirt that smelled overwhelmingly of Lena's vanilla and sandalwood perfume. The scent was intoxicating, wrapping around her, sinking into her skin. She stared up at the ceiling, listening to the sound of the rain and the impossibly loud sound of Lena breathing beside her. Lena was turned away from her, a tense line of rigidity down her back. The wide mattress felt like a vast, empty desert between them, but the air was charged, electric. Every tiny shift of the blankets, every soft sigh from Lena, was magnified in the darkness. This was not like their teenage sleepovers, filled with giggling and junk food. This was something else. A line had been crossed, and Alara had no idea what lay on the other side. Can't sleep. Lena's voice was a soft murmur in the dark. Alara jumped, startled. No. Sorry. Am I moving too much? No, Lena shifted, turning over to face her. In the slivers of city light filtering through the blinds, Alara could just make out the shape of her face, the gleam of her eyes. My mind is just loud tonight. Liam? Alara asked, and the name felt like ash in her mouth. Him. Everything. There was a long pause. Alara. Yeah. What does real love feel like to you? Not the movie version. The real thing. The question knocked the air from Alara's lungs. It was too direct, too close to the bone. It feels like this, she wanted to say. It feels like lying next to you in the dark, terrified, and completely at peace all at once. It's the ache in my chest and the warmth in my veins. It's you. I think, she started, choosing her words with painstaking care. I think it feels safe. Like you can show someone the absolute worst, most broken parts of yourself and they don't run away. They just stay. And they see you. All of you. She felt more than saw Lena's reaction. A subtle release of tension in the air. A soft, shaky exhale. He never stays for the messy parts, Lena whispered. He wants the curated version of me. Another silence stretched. Then, Lena spoke again, her voice smaller, more hesitant. Have you ever felt that? with anyone. The situational irony was a physical weight. Here she was, lying in the bed of the woman she loved, being asked to give an abstract treatise on the very feeling that was consuming her. Once, Alara admitted, her voice thick. I do. She felt a subtle movement, and then the gentle, shocking pressure of Lena's fingers brushing against her hand on the mattress between them. It was a featherlight touch, tentative, questioning. An electric current, pure and potent, shot up Alara's arm and exploded in her chest. She didn't pull away. She couldn't. After a breathless moment, Lena's fingers slowly, carefully, intertwined with hers. Her hand was so warm. The world narrowed to that single point of contact. The rain outside, the dark room, the fight with Liam, it all faded into a distant hum. All that existed was the heat of Lena's skin against hers, the soft texture of her fingers laced through her own. Neither of them spoke. They just lay there, hands clasped in the darkness, and for the first time all night, Alara felt the tight knot of anxiety in her stomach begin to loosen. Lena's breathing deepened, evening out into the slow, steady rhythm of sleep. But her hand remained firmly in Alara's, a silent anchor in the dark. Alara lay awake for hours, her heart a wild, frantic bird in her ribcage, memorizing the feeling. The next 2 days unfolded in a strange, dreamlike haze. Alara's building management sent another update. The damage was worse than expected. It would be the end of the week, at least. Each text message that extended her stay at Lena's apartment felt like another turn of a key in a lock, sealing her fate. The unspoken tension from that first night did not dissipate. It intensified, coiling in the air between them. They moved around each other with a new, heightened awareness. A brush of shoulders in the narrow hallway felt like a brand. A shared glance across the breakfast table held entire conversations. Liam called. Lena ignored it. He texted. She left him on read. He was a ghost in their quiet domestic bubble, a problem for a future that felt increasingly distant. On the third night, they were on the sofa, watching an old black-and-white movie. A fire was crackling in the hearth, a concession to the unseasonable chill that had followed the storm. They were sharing a blanket, their legs tucked up, knees touching. The contact was no longer accidental, it was a settled, accepted fact. Lena wasn't watching the movie. Alara could feel her gaze on the side of her face. She turned, her heart starting its now familiar frantic rhythm. What? Lena's expression was soft, searching. The firelight played over her features, making her look ethereal, vulnerable. I feel more like myself with you this week than I have in the last 2 years with him. The confession was quiet, but it landed with the force of a physical blow. Alara started, but she had no idea what to say. No, listen, Lena insisted, shifting to face her more fully, the blanket pooling around their waists. With him, it's all effort. I'm always thinking about what to say, how to act. I feel like I'm constantly auditioning for a role I'm not even sure I want. But with you, she trailed off, her gaze dropping to Alara's lips for a fraction of a second. It was a flicker, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. But for Alara, it was a seismic shift. The world stopped. She saw it. She was sure she saw it. Lena's eyes darted back up to meet hers, a flush creeping up her neck. With you, she continued, her voice a little unsteady, it's just easy. Like breathing. Alara's own breath hitched. The air between them was so thick she could taste it, a mix of wood smoke, vanilla, and pure, terrifying possibility. She wanted to lean in. The urge was a physical pull, a magnetic force drawing her forward. But the fear, the 4 years of carefully policed boundaries, held her paralyzed. What if she was wrong? What if she destroyed the most important friendship she had ever had based on a flicker of an eye, a moment of firelit vulnerability? Lena seemed to sense her internal war. She reached out, her hand hovering for a moment before she gently brushed a stray strand of hair from Alara's cheek. Her fingers were warm, and they trembled slightly. The touch was achingly tender. It lingered for a moment longer than necessary before she drew her hand back, tucking it under the blanket as if hiding the evidence. I broke up with him, Lena said suddenly, the words dropping into the quiet room. Alara blinked. What? This afternoon. Over text, she gave a small, humorless laugh. Cowardly, I know. But I couldn't bear to hear his voice, to have him try to talk me out of it with empty promises. She looked at Alara, her expression deeply serious. I told him it was over. For good. Oh, Lena, Alara breathed. Are you okay? I feel relieved, Lena said, and the honesty in her voice was stark. And terrified. And clear. For the first time in a long time, I feel clear. Her eyes held Alara's. Being here with you this week, it's been like coming up for air. I didn't realize I was drowning until I could breathe again. The metaphor hung between them, a perfect, painful summation of everything. Alara felt a dam inside her begin to crack, the carefully constructed walls she had built around her heart starting to crumble. That night, in the bed, the space between them had shrunk. They lay facing each other, the silence no longer awkward, but full of a trembling, expectant energy. Lena's hand found hers under the covers, not with the tentative exploration of the first night, but with a quiet certainty, her fingers intertwining with Alara's as if they belonged there. Alara. Lena's voice was barely a whisper. I'm here. I'm scared. Me too, Alara admitted, the truth of it a raw ache in her throat. I think, Lena started, then stopped. She took a shaky breath. I've been thinking about what you said. About what love feels like. About feeling safe. She squeezed Alara's hand. I feel safe with you. I love you. The words were a silent scream in Alara's mind, so loud she was terrified Lena would hear them. I love you, I love you, I love you. I feel safe with you too, was what she managed to say. And in the flickering darkness, it felt like enough. It felt like everything. The next day, Alara got the call. Her apartment was ready. The repairs were finished. She could go home. The news should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a death sentence. Going back to her empty apartment, to her life before this strange, suspended week, felt like stepping back into a cage after a brief, tantalizing taste of freedom. The thought of sleeping in her own bed, alone, was unbearable. The ache, which had been soothed into a quiet hum by Lena's proximity, returned with a vengeance, sharp and debilitating. She began to pack her small overnight bag, her movements slow, robotic. Each item, her toothbrush, the book she had not read, the clothes she had borrowed, felt impossibly heavy. She was retreating, building her walls back up, brick by painful brick. It was self-preservation. This week had been an anomaly, a fluke brought on by a burst pipe and a breakup. It couldn't be real. She couldn't let herself believe it was real. Lena found her in the bedroom, zipping up the bag. Lena's face fell, her expression clouding over with a hurt confusion that was a mirror of Alara's own turmoil. You're leaving, she stated, her voice flat. They fixed the pipe, Alara said, avoiding her eyes, focusing on the zipper. Everything's back to normal. Normal. Lena's voice was tight. Is that what this was? You just waiting for things to go back to normal? Alara flinched. No, that's not what I meant. I can't impose on you anymore. I have to go home, the words sounded hollow, rehearsed. You're not imposing, Lena said, taking a step closer. The energy in the room shifted, the quiet intimacy of the past few days replaced by a frantic, desperate tension. You've been hiding from me all day. You've barely looked at me. Why? What aren't you telling me? Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The point of no return. She could lie, make an excuse, and walk out the door, preserving their friendship in a state of suspended animation, forever tainted by what had almost happened. Or she could tell the truth. And risk everything. I can't do this, Lena, she whispered, her voice cracking. Can't do what? Lena pressed, her voice pleading. Can't be my friend? Can't stay in my apartment? What are you talking about? This. Alara finally looked up, her eyes burning with unshed tears. This. Lying in your bed, holding your hand, pretending it doesn't mean everything to me. Pretending it doesn't rip me apart to know that I have to leave. The words were out, raw and ragged, hanging in the air between them. Lena stared at her, her lips parted, her blue eyes wide with shock. For a terrifying second, Alara saw nothing but stunned silence, and she thought, I've done it. I've broken everything. But then Lena's expression shifted. The shock melted away, replaced by something Alara had never seen before, a look of dawning, earth-shattering realization. It was as if the final piece of a puzzle she had been struggling with for years had just clicked into place. You feel it too, Lena breathed, her voice filled with a stunned wonder. It wasn't a question. Alara could only nod, a single, jerky movement. A tear finally escaped, tracing a hot path down her cheek. This whole time, Lena whispered. Alara's resolve crumbled completely. For years, she choked out, the confession feeling like it was being torn from her soul. For 4 years, Lena. Every time you talked about him, every time I had to watch you be with him, it was like dying a little bit. And this week has been the most beautiful and most painful thing I have ever experienced. Lena closed the space between them in 2 quick steps. She reached up, her hands cupping Alara's face, her thumbs gently wiping away the tears. Her touch was not tentative anymore. It was firm, certain, grounding. I'm so stupid, Lena whispered, her own eyes glistening. Oh, Alara, I'm so stupid. I've been so blind. No, you're not, Alara whispered back, her hands coming up to rest on Lena's waist, the contact sending another shockwave through her system. Yes, I am, Lena insisted, her voice thick with emotion. I've been chasing this idea of what love should look like, the guy, the perfect dates, the future my parents expected. And I've been miserable. Because the entire time, the real thing, the safe thing, the person who sees me, was right here. Her gaze dropped to Alara's lips, and this time, it lingered. There was no mistaking it. It was a clear, undisguised question. I think I've been falling in love with you for a very long time, and I just didn't have the right language for it. Until now. The world stopped spinning. The ache in Alara's chest, the constant companion of 4 years, dissolved. It didn't just fade, it vanished, replaced by a warmth that spread through her entire body, a brilliant, blinding light of pure, unadulterated hope. Lena, she breathed, the name a prayer. Lena's eyes searched hers, a silent question passing between them. Can I? She whispered, her voice trembling. Alara's breath hitched. She couldn't speak. She just nodded again, a tear of relief, of disbelief, slipping down her cheek. Lena leaned in slowly, giving Alara every chance to pull away. But Alara didn't move. She leaned forward, meeting her halfway. The first brush of their lips was impossibly soft, a tentative exploration. It was gentle, hesitant, and more profound than anything Alara had ever imagined. It tasted of salt from their tears and the vanilla of Lena's perfume and something else entirely, something that tasted like rightness, like coming home. A soft gasp escaped Lena's lips, a sound of pure discovery. And then the kiss deepened. The initial hesitation melted away, replaced by a certainty that was breathtaking. Lena's hands tightened on her face, pulling her closer, and Alara's arms wrapped fully around Lena's waist, holding on as if she were the only solid thing in a world that had just been remade. It was not a kiss of frantic passion, but of deep, soul-shaking recognition. It was 4 years of unspoken words, of silent longing, of guarded friendship, all pouring out in a single, perfect moment. It was a quiet confirmation, a sacred promise. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless, resting their foreheads together. Their eyes were closed, their breathing ragged. The silence in the room was no longer empty or tense, it was full, humming with the reverberations of what had just happened. Oh, Lena breathed out, the word a sigh of wonder. Wow. Yeah, Alara whispered, a shaky laugh bubbling up from her chest. Wow. They stood like that for a long moment, simply breathing each other in. The fear was still there, a faint tremor on the edge of this new, brilliant reality, but it was dwarfed by the overwhelming sense of rightness. I'm terrified, Lena admitted, her voice still a whisper against Alara's skin. I know, Alara said, her voice steady now, filled with a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Me too. But I've been scared and alone for 4 years. Being scared with you, that sounds a whole lot better. Lena pulled back just enough to look at her, a real, radiant smile finally breaking through the tears and confusion. It was the most beautiful thing Alara had ever seen. How did I not see it? Lena asked, more to herself than to Alara. Every fight I had with Liam, it was always because he wasn't you. I was measuring every relationship I've ever had against what I had with you, and they all came up short. I just didn't understand what I was measuring. The confession settled the last of Alara's doubts. This wasn't a whim. This wasn't a rebound. This was a realization. A homecoming. So, what do we do now? Alara asked, the practical question feeling both absurd and necessary. Lena's smile softened. She reached down and took Alara's hand, lacing their fingers together. The simple gesture felt monumental, a public declaration in the privacy of her bedroom. First, she said, her thumb stroking the back of Alara's hand. You unpack your bag. The command was gentle, but absolute. And then, Alara whispered, her heart soaring. And then we figure it out, Lena said, her voice full of a brave, new certainty. Together. One day at a time. Starting with this 1 inch, she lifted their joined hands and kissed Alara's knuckles. You're staying. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. And this time, Alara didn't hesitate. 3 weeks later, Alara woke to the smell of coffee and the soft morning light filtering into Lena's bedroom. She was wrapped in Lena's arms, her head resting on Lena's chest, the steady, rhythmic beat of her heart a soothing drum against her ear. The ache was a distant memory, a ghost story from another life. They had fallen into a new rhythm, one that felt more natural than any routine Alara had ever known. It was a rhythm of quiet mornings and shared laughter, of long talks that stretched late into the night and silences that were as comfortable as conversations. It was a rhythm of discovery, of unlearning old fears and learning the shape and texture of this new, precious thing they were building together. Lena stirred, her arms tightening around Alara. Morning, she murmured, her voice thick with sleep. Morning, Alara whispered back, pressing a soft kiss to the warm skin of Lena's collarbone. She felt Lena smile against her hair. I was just dreaming. About what? About a burst pipe, Lena said, and Alara could hear the laughter in her voice. I was sending a thank you card to your old building superintendent. Alara laughed, a genuine, full-bodied sound that felt like it came from a place inside her that had been dormant for years. She tilted her head back to look at Lena, at the sleepy warmth in her blue eyes, at the love that was so clearly, openly reflected there. It still took her breath away sometimes, seeing it directed at her. You know, Alara said softly, tracing the line of Lena's jaw with her fingertip. For 4 years, I thought loving you was my own private tragedy. Lena's expression softened, her hand coming up to cup Alara's cheek. And now? Alara leaned into the touch, a profound sense of peace settling over her. She thought of the long, lonely nights, the carefully hidden pain, the terrifying hope of that first week. She thought of the fear and the kiss and the slow, beautiful unfolding of the days that followed. She was not a ghost anymore. She was seen. She was home. Now, Alara said, her voice clear and sure. I know it was just the prologue.